was supposed to be a peaceful escape, far away from the chaos of city life. Deep in the forests of Montana, a group of 3 friends, Ryan, Cole, and Josh, decided to spend a week in the wilderness, camping beside an old logging trail that hadn't seen use in decades. They were experienced hikers, thrill-seekers even, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to encounter in those endless pines. The first day was perfect, the kind of serenity that makes you forget the rest of the world exists. The air was cold and clean, the trees towered like ancient guardians, and the distant sound of a running stream filled the air. But as night fell, that peace began to feel unnatural, too still. Not even the chirping of insects, just a silence so heavy it pressed against your chest. Ryan noticed it first. He said the forest felt alive, like it was listening. Cole laughed it off, teasing him about watching too many horror movies. But Josh, sitting by the fire, didn't laugh. He had been watching something between the trees for the past hour, a faint glimmer, like eyes reflecting firelight. When he pointed it out, the others saw nothing. They thought he was just tired, but Josh was certain someone was out there. That night he couldn't sleep. He lay awake in his tent, staring at the thin fabric walls, convinced he could hear footsteps circling the campsite. Slow, careful, deliberate, he finally mustered the courage to unzip the tent, flashlight trembling in his hand. But when the beam cut through the darkness, there was nothing, only trees and fog curling low along the forest floor. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The next morning, Ryan found something strange near the campfire, a small wooden carving. It looked like a human figure with long arms and hollow eyes, roughly shaped from pine wood. None of them had brought it, and it definitely hadn't been there the night before. They thought maybe it was some local hunter's prank, but the unease in their stomachs said otherwise. As the day went on, they tried to shrug it off and hiked further, north to explore an abandoned ranger station they'd read about online. The building was rotting, the windows broken, the roof half collapsed. Inside, old maps still hung on the walls, covered in mold. Ryan joked about ghosts, but when Cole opened a drawer, he found something that made them all go silent, a weathered notebook. The last entry, dated 1987, read, "Still hearing it at night. Whistling between the trees. If I don't make it out, whoever finds this, don't stay after dark." They didn't laugh anymore after that. The forest seemed to grow thicker on the way back, the light dimming faster than it should. By the time they reached their tents, the sun had barely set, yet the woods already felt pitch black. Josh decided he was done. He wanted to leave in the morning. Ryan and Cole agreed, though they didn't say it out loud. That night, the silence returned, heavier, denser. Then came the whistling, a long, low tune like someone breathing through their teeth. It moved from tree to tree, circling the camp. The men froze, each in their tent, afraid to even breathe. Ryan whispered, "Is that you, Josh?" But Josh's voice came from the other side of the campsite, trembling. "No!" "It's not me." The whistling stopped. Then the snapping of branches. Footsteps. Ryan gripped his flashlight and knife, his pulse pounding so hard it hurt. He burst out of his tent, shining the beam into the trees, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A tall, thin figure stood about 20 feet away, pale skin stretched unnaturally tight over bones, its head slightly tilted, its limbs too long for its body. It had no clothes, no hair, and its mouth hung open as if it were mimicking their breathing. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the creature slowly stepped forward, the sound of its joints cracking in the cold night air. Ryan shouted for the others, and chaos erupted. They grabbed what they could and ran. Behind them, the creature's movements were fast, impossibly fast, darting between trees, the sound of dry leaves crunching closer and closer. They didn't stop until they reached the dirt road leading back toward the trailhead, gasping for air, covered in sweat. When they looked back, it was gone. No movement, no sound. Just endless forest staring back. The sun finally rose as they reached their car, exhausted and terrified. But as Ryan started the engine, Cole froze, pointing at the hood. Lying there, perfectly centered, was another wooden carving, identical to the one they'd found earlier. But this time the face was carved into a scream. They left without looking back. Later, Ryan did some research online. trying to find any local legends that matched what they saw. He found mentions of something the locals called the Silent Watcher stories. Said it was once a man who got lost in those woods decades ago and never returned. A man who had become part of the forest itself. They say if you stay too long, he mimics your sounds, your breathing, your movements, waiting for the moment you turn your back. None of them ever went camping again, and every once in a while, Ryan still wakes up at night, hearing that faint whistling through his window. The same tune they heard in the woods. There's a stretch of wilderness in northern Oregon that locals refuse to enter after sunset. A dense patch of forest known as Black Hollow Ridge. It doesn't appear on modern hiking maps, and if you ask anyone about it, they'll tell you stories of strange disappearances, flickering lights and whispers that carry on the wind. Most dismiss it as folklore until someone goes missing. Again. This is the story of Sarah Whitfield, a wildlife photographer who vanished in 2016, and what was later found in her recovered camera still gives investigators nightmares. Sarah wasn't a thrill seeker. She was calm, disciplined, and deeply passionate about nature. She had a habit of venturing alone into places untouched by tourists, places that made her feel connected to the wild. Her last known trip was meant to be a 2-day hike into the Black Hollow region to document rare birds. She texted her sister one final message before losing service. Made it to the trailhead. No signal ahead. Back Sunday night, but Sarah never came back. 3 weeks later, a search party finally found her campsite deep in the woods, tent intact, gear undisturbed, camera tripod set up facing the trees. No sign of a struggle. No blood, just absence. The investigators said it was as if she simply stepped out of existence. But the real horror began when they checked her camera's SD card. The first few photos were normal. Landscapes, birds, the golden sunlight streaming through pine needles. Then the tone shifted. Around dusk, the images grew darker, grainier. The final sequence showed Sarah sitting by her fire, glancing nervously into the woods. In the next frame, her eyes are locked on something behind the camera. Then a blur, something tall and faintly human-shaped reflected in her pupils. The following photos captured her flashlight beam cutting through fog, illuminating shapes between trees. But the last photo, that one is what made the ranger reviewing it quit the job entirely. It showed a pale figure crouched low, inches behind Sarah, its elongated arms reaching toward her shoulders, its mouth open wide as if inhaling her scent. After that image, the camera died. That's all anyone found. But here's where it gets even darker. 6 months later, a hunter named Rick ventured into the same area despite warnings. He wanted to see if the stories were true, and what he found shouldn't have been possible. He found the remnants of Sarah's campsite, the same tent, now shredded and half buried under fallen leaves. When he unzipped it, he found her backpack and camera bag, untouched. But next to it was something new, another camera, old and rusted, coated in mud. The film inside was still partially intact. When developed, it revealed images of the forest from decades earlier, possibly the 1970s, and in several of them, the same pale figure could be seen, standing among the trees, always closer in each frame, as though watching the photographer without their knowledge. Locals said they'd heard rumors of a creature called the Lurker of Hollow Ridge, said to appear before someone disappears. They said it had been sighted for generations, sometimes appearing in the background of photos, sometimes even mimicking the missing person's voice days before they vanished. Rick didn't believe it, not at first. But on his second night in the woods, while recording a video diary on his phone, he captured something that still circulates online in dark corners of the internet today. The footage shows him sitting by his campfire, whispering about hearing footsteps. Behind him, the shadows move. There's a soft clicking sound at not an animal, but like bones snapping in rhythm. He turns, flashlight shaking, and whispers, "Who's there?" The camera jerks wildly as he stumbles backward, and for a split second, the light catches a face, pale, eyeless, with a slit where its mouth should be, stretched unnaturally wide, then static. The video cuts off abruptly. Rick was found 2 days later by a rescue helicopter, disoriented, barefoot, his clothes torn. He couldn't explain how he got out or why his phone had been found 5 miles away from where he was discovered. The doctors said he suffered from severe dehydration and trauma. But there was one disturbing detail they couldn't explain when they examined: the soles of his feet. They were covered in splinters, deep and black, as though he had been walking barefoot through trees for days. Yet he remembered nothing. When reporters interviewed him later, he said something that chilled everyone to the bone. "It followed me out," he whispered. "It doesn't stay in the forest anymore." After that, Rick disappeared again, his truck abandoned near the same trailhead. No one has found him since. The state eventually closed off Black Hollow Ridge entirely. Fences went up, new maps omitted the area, and official reports listed all cases as environmental hazards. But locals still hear things at night. They say if you drive past the old logging road and roll down your windows, you can sometimes hear a faint clicking sound echoing through the trees, like something moving just out of sight. And some people claim they've seen lights in the woods, soft, glowing orbs that drift through the darkness before vanishing completely. Whatever it is, whatever took Sarah and Rick, it's still there, watching from behind the trees. Some say it feeds on those who seek solitude, that it waits for people who think they're completely alone. Because when you're deep enough into the wild, far from any human sound, you start to hear your own heartbeat. And that's when it starts mimicking it. One faint echo after another until it matches your rhythm perfectly, then stops. That's when it's behind you. The files from Sarah's camera and Rick's phone were eventually sealed, labeled as evidence in ongoing missing persons investigations. But those who have seen them say the images aren't random. They form a pattern, almost like a message scratched into the film grain. One investigator described it as a warning written by the forest itself. Maybe that's why the area was erased from public maps. Maybe the truth was too much for anyone to handle. And maybe, just maybe, if you ever find yourself deep in the woods, standing between pines that block out the sky, and you hear that faint clicking or see a soft light hovering ahead, don't follow it. Don't take a picture. Don't even breathe too loud, because the lurker is still out there, listening, waiting for the moment curiosity outweighs fear. If you've made it this far into the story and felt that unease, crawling up your spine, remember? These stories aren't just legends. They're warnings. There are places on this planet where silence has its own voice, and it doesn't like to be disturbed. If you love true horror stories like this, stories pulled from real disappearances, unexplained footage, and things buried deep in the woods, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another terrifying tale. Trust me, what's coming next in the final story will make you think twice before going anywhere alone ever again. Stay tuned, and don't look behind you.